Hi, I am Dr. Brianna Gaynor, and welcome to this week's Dr. Gaynor Speaks. Every week I go live on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube, and we talk about mental health topics, everything from health and wellness to managing stressful life events to real life struggles. And today I want to answer questions directly from you guys, from your DMs. So I will be answering the questions that have been sent in, and I will give you my professional advice. There is a note though. This is not to replace one on one medical help. So if something feels urgent, if you are struggling and you need more support than is provided, please dial 911, proceed to your local emergency room, or contact your medical provider as soon as possible. Okay, let's get straight to the questions that we have this week. Let's dive in. So, I am going to be moving from two screens and I'm going to read to you some of the questions we've had. Let's get right to it. So, the first question says, "Hi, Dr. Gaynor. Lately, everything feels overwhelming. What some things I can do when stress hits so I don't completely shut down?" Well, the first thing I would say is space is so important. Sometimes when stress is overwhelming, it's an indication that we need to move away from whatever that is. That doesn't mean that it makes everything better, but sometimes taking a beat, stepping away, and taking a breath is going to be really, really important. Because when we are stressed out, our brains aren't thinking clearly, our emotions are all over the place. A lot of times our heart rate is high. We're having difficulty breathing. We can't think straight, and our body is not functioning the way it's supposed to be. We're in flight or fight mode. And so stepping away from whatever is going on, if possible, is going to be helpful. Taking deep breaths to center yourself is also helpful. You cannot manage stress. You cannot come up with good solutions when you're not thinking clearly and when your body is in stress mode. So stepping away if possible, taking deep breaths, putting your hand on your heart, and reminding yourself that you are okay in this moment. Centering yourself is going to be really important to get yourself to a place where you can be calm enough to think. And then the other thing that's really important when you are experiencing stress is shutting down all distractions that are not necessary. So for me, for instance, I know one of the most stressful times of the week is the beginning of the week for me because it's my first day back at work. It's a long day. There are a lot of things going on. And a lot of times I need to cut out any extra distractions. I don't need to scroll on my phone. I don't need to answer personal calls right now. I don't need to be writing a report and emailing and checking platforms. I don't need to be doing three things at once. So stopping doing the things that aren't necessary and doing one thing at a time. A lot of times when we're stressed out, it's about stopping, pausing, calming our body down so that we can do one thing at a time. Once we can get to that place of calm, once we can start to feel accomplished in completing one thing and go on to the next, then we can start to think clearly to make a plan of what we need to do to deal with the stress that is at hand. But first, stop. When you are stressed, continuing to do the thing you're doing, continuing to be stressed, continuing to have difficulty breathing, continuing to have anxiety is not going to help. So give yourself a moment to recollect yourself so that you can think clearly, so that you can do one thing at a time, and then you can start to make a plan to prioritize. But give yourself the time you need to breathe so that you can think more clearly to make the plan that you need to manage your stress. And once you can think more clearly, you start to think of all the other ideas, all the other things that have been helpful, the people you can call, the way you can delegate. But you can't make an effective plan if you're stressed out. So first you need to stop, manage your physical reactions so that you can think more clearly. The next question is, I'm a new single parent and I can't sleep more than a few hours due to worry. I worry about my baby. I worry about my family. I worry about the bills and everything in between. I keep worrying about small things all day and it's exhausting. How do you control worry? I need rest. When should I consider that it's more than normal worry and get professional help? So in that, I heard a lot of stress, even listening to all the worries. And those are things that we all can we've all have experienced before, right? Maybe not having a new baby, but having a lot of different stressors that overwhelm us. So the first thing I think that's really important is thinking about what is in your control. A lot of times worry is about feeling like we don't have control. So what are the things that you're doing that you can do to manage some of this? Are you taking care of yourself? Are you doing the things you need to do for your baby? Are you asking for help? Do you feel like you have the support that you need financially? What are the things that you can do right now in your power? And then what are the things that you're unable to do? Make that list first, because a lot of times we kind of need to dump it all out and think about it before we can say, oh, just don't be stressed. Everything's going to be okay. It's about starting to think about what you have control over and what you don't. First of all, one of the things you do have control over is trying to take good care of yourself so that you can sleep and rest. Remembering that there are only 24 hours in the day. And if you are not taking care of yourself and sleeping, then you're not going to be any good to anyone else. So once you can make that list and figure out what you can control and what you can't control, let's talk about some things we can put in place. Or does this feel too overwhelming? When I look at this list, are these realistic things that I can say, okay, there are some things that I can do, or I'm doing the things. Now I just need to trust that those things are working as they always have. If this list starts to feel too overwhelming, if you don't feel like you have the support or help to ask for help, then it may be time to get professional help. And that's not just because you're stressed with all the things, but a lot of times when we are starting a new role, having a baby is a big deal. There's a lot of different worries and stressors you've never had to have before. So why not seek support? I tend to think that sometimes we think that it has to be a major ordeal for us to ask for help. But sometimes we all need a little extra support. And so reaching out is not a bad thing. Sometimes if we can't get the perspective that we need from ourselves or from the closest people around us, we need an outside person. And so the truth is, even if you can look at that list and identify what's controllable and what's not and come up with a plan, it may still be a good idea to seek support, because this is a new role and these are new responsibilities and these are new struggles that you have not had to deal with before. So give yourself the time and the space. And maybe part of what you can't control, but you will learn to control, is through therapy. Through therapy, you can learn how to manage worry and manage your anxiety, manage the stressors, how to take care of yourself, how to get better sleep. So I would suggest you get the support that you need so that you can be the best you, first for yourself and then for your new baby. And congratulations. The next question is, Dr. Gaynor, how do I set boundaries with toxic family and friends without feeling guilty or like I'm letting them down? Well, I exhaled because family is challenging, because we love our family. And sometimes with love and care of family, there can be different boundaries that can be crossed in family that maybe wouldn't necessarily happen with friendships or in romantic relationships. And so I think the first thing to do is identify what is the specific issue or problem. What is the boundary that's being crossed? And what need is that meeting? A lot of times when we can have these struggles in families, it can be a lot of different situations or reasons. Sometimes we want to feel valued. We want to feel important. Sometimes we don't want to upset people. Sometimes we're fearful of rejection. Sometimes we need validation. A lot of times in families, there have been a lot of patterns that have happened throughout life that have created how we interact and engage. But when you're starting to feel like there's a boundary that's being crossed, first identifying what is the issue, what need it's meeting that may be negative, and what is the impact if you continue with these boundary difficulties, with this relationship? What's the impact on you? Are you losing money? Are you losing sleep? Are you struggling because it's impacting your other relationships? Are you frustrated and it's impacting your relationship with that family member because it's toxic? Sometimes it could be, maybe there's a family member who's often asking for money because they need support. Maybe they think that you are the person who is financially doing well. And so maybe you're struggling right now, but you don't want to say no because you don't want them to struggle too. But if the impact is not only going to impact you financially, but also emotionally, and it's also impacting your ability to take care of yourself, how good are you being to this family member if you can't take care of yourself first? Taking care of yourself is not selfish, because if you are someone who pours into other people, if you're not poured into, you don't have anything to give. It's okay to say no. And I would say it's also okay to feel guilty, and reminding yourself that this is not your fault. You can help people. There's nothing wrong with that, but it's not your responsibility. When we start to take responsibility for people's actions, behaviors, emotions, we're taking on roles that aren't meant for us. And then what's the impact to that person? If you continue to enable them, is that really helping them? It's not helping you, but is it really serving them? It's really important that we can all learn how to grow and develop and find our own way. And sometimes when we enable people, they never quite learn that. And so saying no is actually a blessing. It's a gift to say, I cannot do this. I love you, and I'm hoping that you can find a way, but this does not serve me, and I can't do this right now. And this no longer works. It's okay to change your mind and take care of yourself. You are likely someone who does all the things, and sometimes it's okay to do the thing for you first. When you get on the plane, they say put the mask on yourself before you can put it on someone else. We need to remember that and practice that a little bit more. The next question is, at what age do we make them, and I think this is an adult child, become more self-sufficient? When do we stop fully taking care of them and teach them how to become a worker in this society? I understand we will help them along the journey we call life, but we are not going to be here forever, and they have to be able to survive. So I think that this is a parent talking about an adult child and kind of letting them go. And I think it sounds like from the way this question is phrased that the answer is already known. It's probably time now. You know, one of the greatest gifts that a parent can give a child is to be able to teach them to be self-sufficient when they're no longer here, that they can take care of themselves, and that they know that once they leave this earth, their child will be okay. And that means teaching them independence, pushing them to do that, and also being here to support them through the process. So this may be the time to do that, to start and remember what the end goal is. Just because it's comfortable right now, if your end goal is you want your child to be self-sufficient, I think you start now. I think you start by saying no. I think you start by putting boundaries in place. What those boundaries are, you can determine. So maybe the adult is living with you. Maybe now they start to pay bills, and maybe there's a timeline for when they move out. Maybe you can kind of help them with following up for jobs, but there's a definite timeline and you stick to what you say. Helping to develop those skills are going to be invaluable. And it doesn't sound like this is helpful for your adult child or for you. And it could likely negatively impact your relationship. So trust your instincts and start now. Quick question. What are ways to manage anxiety in the moment without relying on alcohol or scrolling my phone? Breathing. Our breath is one of the most powerful things that we have because it helps to get oxygen to our brain. It also restricts the oxygen to our brain. So how we breathe makes such a big difference. I learned box breathing. So it's breathing in for 4, holding for 4, out for 4, and then hold that for 4. The counting and the focusing really helps to bring your breath back. Because again, when you're not calm, when you are hyperventilating, when you're struggling, your brain is not getting the oxygen that it needs and you're not thinking clearly. Fresh air is also helpful. Sometimes the sun, getting fresh air, getting outside, getting out of your environment is going to be really helpful. Another thing that's helpful with anxiety is mindfulness. So really being able to focus on the here and now and what's going on. One of the ones that I love is really focused on senses. What are 5 things I see? 4 things I hear, 3 things I smell, 2 things I can touch, 1 thing I can taste. But really being able to focus on the here and now and bring yourself back is really going to be very important. And then another thing that I like to do is I think getting that energy out. What are the fears? Sometimes it may be as simple as there's so much energy in your body, you just need to scream it out. I had a client a few years ago who I told her, as she was stressed with everything in life and she didn't have a lot of space for herself at home, when you're driving home, just scream, scream. No one's in your car. Get that energy out of you. Or having time where you're just speaking out what the worries are. Sometimes fear is so impacted in our body. When we can get it out, speak it out, release it, and hear it, it helps to kind of understand, for us to really understand what we're fearful of, and really to start to debunk some of those things and really start to address them. But there's something about things being caught in your body when you're not getting them out that tend to lead to and perpetuate anxiety. So how do you get it out? Do you write it? Do you yell it? Do you scream it? Do you work out? Physical exercise and activity really does help with mental health management, stress. I have experienced that time and time again. Even when I do not want to go to the gym, I don't feel like it, I'm tired. Something about those natural endorphins can be helpful. The next question is, I know you said never go, I know they say never go to bed angry, but it's not really that easy when you're hurt. I've been married for 7 years and I do this, but when it is not healthy to try to, but when is it not healthy to try to sleep next to someone that you're angry with? Good question. I really think, this whole they thing, I remember my mom would say that a lot. They say, I don't know who they are, but there are so many different experts that we hear. But we are also experts in our lives. So I would say, what are you and your partner's conflict styles? Are you people who need to think about it and process it beforehand, before you talk? Are you people who need to talk about it in the moment? Can you not sleep if you don't talk about it? Can you go to sleep on it, and come back? I think those are conversations that are important to have before you have an argument. And then also recognizing what someone's triggers are. Sometimes, we all have triggers. So if I'm someone who's triggered by separation, makes me feel like you're not connected to me, or someone else is triggered by someone being angry at them as feeling like they're being rejected, then it may be that if you go to sleep in separate rooms, you are bringing up those triggers. So talking about what your triggers are and how you want to deal with those conflictual moments ahead of time is going to be helpful, and trying to adhere to that. And so if your partner is triggered by you sleeping in another room, even if you're not ready to talk, but you guys have talked about that, and the message you're sending is, I'm not leaving you, I just need a moment, then maybe you do sleep next to them. And maybe you're angry, but maybe you physically touch them and let them know, I'm here, we'll talk later. But how does that work for you and your partner? What are the triggers that could make things worse? And what can you agree upon when things get heated? That is my suggestion, because what works for you may not work for someone else. But knowing those unique things so that you're working together, even when you're in a conflict versus against each other, is really going to be what's most helpful. The next question is, I want to start therapy, but I don't know how to find the right therapist or what questions to ask in my first session. Any advice? My question for you would be, what are your expectations? When you haven't been to therapy, a lot of times there's an expectation that, okay, I should just feel better. This isn't feeling good. I'm not fixed. And the truth is, therapy is hard. It brings up stuff that a lot of people never want to talk about. And a lot of times things can be more triggering than relieving initially, because we're opening wounds that we haven't really touched. The things that I talk about in therapy, I probably don't talk about on a regular basis, and they can be painful. It's helping you see patterns and just kind of negative behaviors that have probably plagued you for a really long time. So what is your expectation and what do you need? A lot of times I hear people say, I really need to know what to do. This is great to talk, you hear me, but what are my next steps? So really being able to talk about what your expectations are, and maybe asking what I should expect. How do I know I'm going to feel better? I'm struggling with depression. How do I know that this is helpful? How do I know what to do when I'm leaving here? Asking your questions, asking what you should expect hearing your therapist's perspective, talking about what you think you need and what your expectations are, and coming together are going to be really important. And a lot of times, really having practical things to do afterwards is what's most helpful for most people. I need to know what I do after this. I need to know what this looks like. Processing can be really helpful, but how do we take this outside of therapy? Because if therapy is twice a month and I'm living every other day by myself, how do I know that I'm utilizing this in the best way to become the best me? And then the last question is, how do I support my partner who's struggling with low mood without taking on their feelings or losing my own energy? You remind yourself that you can't fix anyone. You remind yourself that you're here to support, but not fix. One of the most powerful things that I learned years ago was that I could help a friend, and no matter how much I love that friend, it was not my job to fix them. And so I think it's really important when you are supporting people to ask them what they need. A lot of times we want to give advice or tell you what you should do, what you shouldn't do. This person did this, that person did that. But at the end of the day, that may not be what the person needs. So one of the things I try to ask is, what do you need from me? Do you want my advice? Do you just want me to listen? Do you just want me to be here and not say anything? But what do you need? And if the person doesn't know, then there's something about support that even though it doesn't feel like you're doing anything, you are. There's something about knowing someone is there for you. They're there to hear you. They care about you. They are willing to support you. That's helpful. Do you need me to look for therapists for you? But asking what they need and respecting their needs is important. And also remembering that this is their individual journey. While you can support, you can't fix or do anything when they're not willing to. And they have to be willing to do the work. We all have to be willing to do the work in our own lives to really see true success and progress. And also taking care of yourself. You can't be the best support to anyone else if you're not taken care of. So remembering to give yourself the breaks you need, to take the time to get the support you need for yourself, to nurture yourself, to deal with the frustration that can come from seeing a loved one struggling and not being able to fix it because that's frustrating. All those things is also going to be helpful so that you can have the energy you need. So if they do need your support, you have it to give. I hope that this has been helpful. This has been Dr. Gaynor Speaks. I am meeting every Wellness Wednesday to talk about mental health, to answer your questions, and to talk about how we can continue to live to become our best selves. Remember, my first book, Nina's Smile, is on Amazon and anywhere you buy books. It's a book about resilience, how we deal with hard times and overcome. While it is a children's book, it's also a book to be shared with the whole family. And there's also a workbook in the back to really help us think through how we deal with struggles and how we continue to be our most resilient selves. I will see you next time. This has been Dr. Brianna Gaynor with Dr. Gaynor Speaks Wellness Wednesday. Take care.